War, blood, and battlefield surgery doesn't exactly scream comedy, right? But in 1970, MASH exploded onto the screen, ripping up every Hollywood rule. Today, we're diving into 20 shocking facts you never knew about the film that turned a bloody war into a bizarre comedy revolution. Number 1. Donald Sutherland and Elliott Gould tried to get Robert Altman fired. Imagine this. You're the director of a war comedy, and two of your biggest stars sneak behind your back to the studio execs, demanding you be fired. That's exactly what happened on MASH. Donald Sutherland and Elliott Gould couldn't stand Robert Altman's bizarre style. He encouraged chaos, let actors talk over each other, and even told them to ignore the script. To the actors, it felt like amateur hour, so they marched into 20th Century Fox and begged the studio to replace him. However, Fox refused. Altman stayed, and his messy style became the movie's secret weapon, giving it that raw, unpredictable energy audiences loved. In the end, Sutherland and Gould had to swallow their pride and watch the director they hated turn MASH into a worldwide hit. Number 2, the studio slapped an X rating on it at first. Before MASH became a comedy classic, it nearly got buried alive by the ratings board. When Fox first submitted the film, censors freaked out. The movie had blood-soaked surgery scenes that looked disturbingly real, plus edgy jokes that pushed way beyond what audiences were used to in 1970. The MPAA's initial response? An X rating, the kiss of death for any mainstream release. Fox panicked. An X-rated war comedy meant empty theaters and financial disaster. But Robert Altman and his team fought back, arguing that the gore was honest, the humor was satirical, and the film wasn't pornography. After a heated back and forth, the rating was dropped to an R. That change saved the movie's release, and the Too Hot for Theaters comedy went on to become one of the studio's biggest surprise hits. Number 3, Altman told the actors to ignore the script.
Oh, what's the matter with her today?
Oh, I don't know. I think it's one of those ladies things.
Most directors guard their scripts like sacred texts, not Robert Altman. On MASH, he did the unthinkable. He told his actors to throw the script out the window. He wanted overlapping dialogue, messy interruptions, and spur-of-the-moment jokes that sounded like real conversations. The result? Half the movie feels like you've stumbled into a chaotic military camp where everyone's talking at once. Studio execs thought it was madness. They pushed for it to be rained down, fearing audiences wouldn't understand a word. But Altman didn't back down, and his gamble paid off. That rough, unscripted energy gave MASH its distinctive voice. Part war film, part dark improv comedy. What the studio called incoherent, audiences loved for its authenticity. In fact, this radical approach reshaped how dialogue was written and heard in movies for decades after. Number 4, it was shot during the Vietnam War. MASH claimed to be set during the Korean War, but audiences in 1970 weren't fooled for a second. America was waist-deep in Vietnam, and Robert Altman's movie played like a razor-sharp satire of the war everyone was watching on the nightly news. Bloody surgeries, dark humor, soldiers cracking jokes to survive. This wasn't a distant history lesson. It was a mirror held up to the present. Critics immediately read it as anti-Vietnam commentary, even though Altman never mentioned Vietnam once in the script. That plausible deniability let Fox release it without government backlash, while audiences felt the sting of its satire loud and clear. In fact, the film became one of the first mainstream movies to question the morality of modern war, sneaking its criticism past censors under the disguise of Korea. Number 5, the football game was a mess. The climactic football game in MASH looks like mayhem, and that's because it was. Robert Altman had little interest in perfectly choreographed sports scenes. Instead, he handed the actors football gear, told them the rough outline of who should win, and then just let the chaos explode. Cameras rolled as tackles turned sloppy, plays fell apart, and half the actors forgot what they were supposed to do. Altman filmed it like a documentary, catching the confusion in real time. The result feels messy, unpredictable, and weirdly authentic, like an actual pickup game in the middle of a war zone. What could have been a forgettable sports gag became one of the movie's funniest and most iconic set pieces, proving once again that Altman's controlled chaos was his secret weapon. Number 6, the infamous shower scene humiliated Hot Lips.
Hot lips?
Sally Kellerman, who played Hot Lips Houlihan, was pushed to her limit during one of MASH's most notorious scenes. Robert Altman staged a prank where soldiers yanked down the walls of the shower tent, exposing her naked to the entire camp. Kellerman wasn't told exactly how it would play out. Altman wanted her shock to be genuine. And it was. She later admitted she felt humiliated and furious, convinced the director had crossed a line. But Altman insisted the humiliation was the point, to break Hot Lips' icy, rigid persona and turn her into part of the group. Controversial as it was, the scene became iconic, earning Kellerman an Oscar nomination. For her, it was both career-making and personally scarring. A moment of real vulnerability captured on film. Number 7, gory surgery scenes used real animal organs. One reason MASH's surgery scenes still look disturbingly real? Because they kind of were. Robert Altman wanted the operating room to feel graphic and chaotic, not like a polished Hollywood set. So instead of relying on rubber props or stage blood, the crew used actual animal organs as stand-ins for human tissue. Buckets of the stuff were hauled onto set, and the actors, many of them squeamish, had to slice, stitch, and dig through the real thing while the cameras rolled. The smell was overwhelming, and several cast members nearly gagged. But Altman refused to fake it, knowing that the visceral realism would make the comedy around it land even harder. The result? Audiences laughed, but they also squirmed. Number 8. The Army didn't want anything to do with it.
What was that, sir? I give everything to radar. What?
When Hollywood made a war movie in the 60s or 70s, the U.S. military usually jumped in with support, providing equipment, extras, and technical advice. But with MASH, the Department of Defense slammed the door shut. After reading the script, officials were appalled. The movie mocked authority, showed doctors clowning around with bloodied soldiers, and treated the military chain of command as a joke. To the Pentagon, it wasn't a tribute to heroism, it was pure insubordination. So unlike other war films of the time, MASH had to make do without real Army backing. No official gear, no access to bases, nothing. Robert Altman leaned into that rejection, embracing the ragged, anarchic style that made the movie feel even more rebellious. Ironically, the Army's refusal only helped solidify MASH as the ultimate anti-establishment war comedy. Number 9. The opening theme was written as a joke.
It brings on many changes.
One of the strangest success stories to come out of MASH is its theme song, "Suicide is Painless." Robert Altman wanted a piece of music that sounded haunting but also absurdly bleak. He asked composer Johnny Mandel to handle the tune, but when it came to lyrics, Altman had one rule. They had to be so bad a 14-year-old could have written them. So he handed the job to his teenage son, Mike. The kid scribbled down the lyrics in under an hour. Dark, sarcastic lines about death, and Altman kept them. What started as a throwaway joke became a phenomenon. "Suicide is Painless" went on to top charts overseas, out-earning Altman's own directing paycheck. Imagine that. A song written by a high schooler became one of the most recognizable and profitable theme songs in movie history. Number 10. The studio hated Altman's editing. When Robert Altman turned in his cut of MASH, the executives at 20th Century Fox were horrified. The dialogue was messy, characters constantly interrupted each other, and half the time you couldn't tell who was speaking. To the studio, it looked like Altman had made a mistake, or worse, didn't know how to direct. They seriously considered recutting the movie to fix it. But before pulling the trigger, they screened it for a test audience. The reaction was the complete opposite. Viewers loved the chaos. They said it felt authentic, like real life, not a polished Hollywood script. That feedback saved the film from being gutted in the editing room. And that bold, overlapping style became Altman's signature for the rest of his career. Before we dive into the next batch of secrets, let's hit pause. If you're loving these behind-the-scenes reveals from MASH, make sure you mash that like button so more fans can stumble across this video. And hey, what's your earliest memory of watching MASH? Drop it in the comments. Love to see which moment hooked you. Number 11. The move contained a lot of religious jabs. Robert Altman loved poking authority, and in MASH, he didn't stop at the military, he went after religion too. The most infamous moment is the so-called Last Supper scene. In it, the characters gather around Painless, the dentist who believes he's suicidal, and stage a farewell meal before he takes a pill. The imagery is unmistakable. It's a dark parody of Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper. Altman framed the actors exactly like the painting, complete with solemn faces and ritual overtones, except here, it's all a twisted joke. Censors bristled at the blasphemy, arguing that audiences would see it as mocking Christianity. But Altman refused to cut it, and the scene stayed. Today it stands as one of the film's boldest moments, both a shocking bit of satire and a perfect example of Altman's fearless irreverence. Number 12. One actor was actually drunk on set. Frank Burns, the uptight and self-righteous surgeon in MASH, was played by Robert Duvall with a perfect mix of arrogance and instability. But some of that instability wasn't just acting. Duvall was known to carry a flask around during downtime on set, and occasionally he'd slip into a scene with more than a little buzz. Instead of shutting it down, Robert Altman leaned into it. He loved the unpredictability and sometimes kept the cameras rolling while Duvall stumbled or snapped with genuine irritation. The result blurred the line between performance and reality. Burns' short temper and frazzled energy felt a little too real because, in some cases, it was. It gave the character an edge that fit seamlessly into Altman's chaotic world, even if it came from a very unscripted place. Number 13. The film was almost rated NC-17. Even after dodging an X rating early on, MASH wasn't out of the woods. When the MPAA reviewed the final cut, they nearly slapped it with what would later be called an NC-17. The problem? Altman had combined graphic surgery sequences, nudity, and a relentless streak of anti-authoritarian humor into one unruly package. To censors, it was too gory to be a comedy, too sexual to be a war film, and too subversive to be safe for general audiences. Fox fought tooth and nail, arguing the film wasn't obscene. After tense negotiations, the MPAA relented and also gave it an R, which meant adults could see it without restriction. That ruling was crucial. Without it, MASH might have been buried as an underground cult oddity instead of exploding into a mainstream hit. Number 14. It all started with a novel. Before MASH shocked audiences on screen, it began as a scrappy little book written by a surgeon who'd actually been there. In 1968, Dr. H. Richard Hornberger, using the pen name Richard Hooker, published MASH, a novel about 3 Army doctors. It was based on his real experiences patching up soldiers in a mobile Army surgical hospital during the Korean War. The novel was raw, funny, and filled with the kind of dark humor only someone in that chaos could pull off. Hollywood immediately saw potential. Ring Lardner Jr. adapted it into the screenplay, but director Robert Altman took it even further, blending satire, gore, and gallows humor into something audiences had never seen before. Without Hooker's cynical, brutally honest novel, the groundbreaking 1970 film simply wouldn't exist. Number 15. The painless scene almost got cut. This one nearly killed the movie before it ever hit theaters. The infamous painless scene, where the camp stages a full-blown funeral for Painless the dentist, horrified Fox executives. They thought audiences would storm out of the theater not laughing but traumatized. A funeral? With soldiers singing, drinking, and joking about a man's last night alive? Too dark, they said. But Altman wasn't budging. He knew the scene wasn't about death. It was about how humans laugh in the face of chaos, how comedy and tragedy collide in war. He won the battle, and the studio backed down. Ironically, the very scene they feared would sink the film ended up becoming one of the defining moments of MASH, a mix of gallows humor and raw honesty that perfectly captured Altman's vision. Number 16. The loudspeaker announcements were improvised.
Attention camp compound. Urine specimens will be required from all disregard last transmission.
Those bizarre, often hilarious camp announcements echoing through MASH? They weren't scripted. Robert Altman handed the microphone to his assistant, who just started riffing nonsense. Lost socks, ridiculous medical notices, and bone-dry delivery. All of it was made up on the spot. Altman loved the absurd contrast. While characters were performing surgery or dealing with war's chaos, the PA blared surreal, bureaucratic nonsense in the background. It became a running gag, and more importantly, it gave the camp a lived-in feel, like a real place full of overlapping details. Fox thought it was distracting, but audiences adored the texture it added. Those offbeat announcements helped define the movie's anarchic tone, proving that sometimes the best comedy comes from letting chaos seep in at the edges of the frame. Number 17. The movie made $81 million on a $3 million budget. MASH wasn't just a critical hit, it was a box office miracle. Shot for only about $3 million, Robert Altman's chaotic war comedy went on to gross a staggering $81 million worldwide. At the time, 20th Century Fox was in deep financial trouble, bleeding money from flops like Dr. Dolittle and Hello, Dolly. Executives didn't even have high hopes for MASH. They saw it as a risky, vulgar experiment. But audiences connected instantly with its mix of black humor, irreverence, and anti-authoritarian bite. Word of mouth carried it far beyond expectations, and the surprise windfall actually helped stabilize Fox during a shaky period. This scrappy little war satire didn't just change film comedy, it literally helped keep a major Hollywood studio alive when it needed saving most. Number 18, the cast had no idea it would become a TV show. When MASH wrapped in 1970, none of the cast or crew imagined it would spawn one of the most successful TV series of all time. In fact, many of them assumed the movie was far too raw, chaotic, and controversial to ever be franchised. With its gore, nudity, profanity, and anti-establishment edge, the actors figured it would stand alone as a bold, one-off experiment. Even Robert Altman himself doubted the film would have much of a shelf life. Yet just 2 years later, CBS rolled out the television version, which cleaned up the material and softened the edges for network audiences. To the surprise of everyone involved in the original film, that little too-wild war comedy became the foundation for one of TV's longest-running and most beloved series. Number 19. The operating room was a real tent in Malibu. To keep MASH authentic, Robert Altman refused to build traditional soundstage sets for the medical scenes. Instead, he had the production team set up real military tents on location in the Malibu hills. The main operating room was shot inside an actual tent, filled with blinding lights, sticky heat, and limited space, exactly the kind of environment real field surgeons faced in Korea. The result was a suffocating, claustrophobic realism that made the gore and tension hit harder than if it had been filmed on a polished set. Actors were sweating for real, sometimes distracted by the overwhelming heat, which only enhanced the frantic energy Altman wanted. It wasn't Hollywood glamour, it was barely controlled chaos inside canvas walls. That decision gave the movie its gritty, documentary-like tone that audiences had never seen in a war comedy before. Number 20, it won the Palme d'Or at Cannes. For a film packed with gore, profanity, and bawdy humor, MASH didn't look like the kind of movie that would impress international critics. But in 1970, it stunned the film world by taking home the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, the highest honor in world cinema. Robert Altman's chaotic vision, dismissed by Fox executives as incoherent, was suddenly being hailed as groundbreaking satire. The French critics in particular praised its fearless blend of comedy and horror, its anti-establishment bite, and its documentary-style realism. Winning Cannes cemented MASH as more than just a rowdy war comedy. It was now seen as high art with a purpose. What started as a scrappy, low-budget gamble ended up not only saving Fox's wallet, but also redefining what war films could be on the global stage. And because we love you so much, here's a bonus fact. John Landis was an extra in the film.
How do you like them apples, Charlie? Now you can't trust anybody.
Before he became the director of Animal House and the Blues Brothers, John Landis was just a hungry young filmmaker trying to break into Hollywood. During production of MASH, he landed a background gig as one of the many extras in the wild football game sequence. At the time, Landis was hustling around Fox's lot, doing odd jobs and trying to get noticed. He later admitted that he soaked up Altman's loose improvisational style, which would influence his own comedy films throughout the 1970s and 80s. It's one of those blink and you'll miss it Hollywood moments, a future comedy legend running around in the background of a movie that redefined comedy itself. MASH wasn't just birthing a TV empire, it was quietly shaping the next generation of filmmakers. And there you have it, 20 wild, heartbreaking, and downright bizarre facts about MASH. This wasn't just a movie, it was history in motion. It broke rules, pushed boundaries, and gave us moments that still hit decades later. Whether you came for the comedy, the chaos, or the quiet heartbreak, MASH proved one thing: even in war, humanity shines through. So tell me, what's the fact that blew your mind most?
Well, that was weird.